17 days to the 2024 presidential and parliamentary elections. Hello and welcome to Election Brief with me, Emefa Akosia Adeti. Election Headquarters is brought to you in association with Petrosol Platinum Energy, Energizing Dreams, Chobox, a convenient service, German Ozone Medical Center, Alternative Therapy, Dental Wellness and Beauty, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, AICPA, together as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, Youth Bridge Foundation, Bridging Gaps for Positive Youth Development, Syntex Tanks, a strong, a tough, Potential Real Estate, your trusted partner in real estate, Deluxe Paint Mu Champion. We're live on DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 125, and all social media platforms and around the world on myjoyonline.com. Please stay for details. Now, in the 2020 presidential polls, 75 out of the 275 constituencies spanning 13 regions were won with margins of less than 10%, according to the analysis by the Joy News Research Desk. Nearly half of these constituencies are concentrated in Ghana's three main swing regions, Greater Accra, Central and Western. These regions remain critical to determining who emerges victorious in the tight race ahead. Now, joining me in studio is Joy News' lead data research analyst, Isaac Kofi Ajay, with more insights from the analysis. Kofi, good afternoon. And what can we learn from this group of 75 constituencies and how they affect the coming elections?
Now, if I just like you have on your screens, 75 out of the 275 constituencies in the 2020 elections were constituencies that were actually won with very, very slim margins less than 10% across 13 regions out of the 16 regions that we have. Now, if you do further analysis, you will even realize that there were some constituencies that the margin between the NPP and the NDC was just about 0.3 percentage points, some 0.6. Now, before we even go to the touch screen, this Leku is one area that I want us to look at. This is an area that has been voting, considered has been voting skirt and blouse for a very long time. It followed the Greater Accra region as a whole in 2020. Greater Accra actually voted for NDC, but NDC lost in the 2020 elections. Leku did same. That time, I mean, they voted NDC, presidential, and voted NDC again, parliamentary. Okay. This year, there could be something different in Leku. We don't know if it will revert to the, skirt and blouse that they've been doing in almost all the various elections. Now,
let's say that consistently in Leku, would it be that a particular presidential candidate for a party has won continuously before? Or what you mean by swing is a cut across both presidential and even parliamentary? So
what we know of Leku is that it's actually a swing if it doesn't go in anybody's favor. And sometimes it acts as a bellwether constituency. It votes for the winning, party. But in 2020, we all saw that Greater Accra changed in terms of its election demographic. I mean, voting for a losing party for the first time. And Leku was one of the constituencies that followed its mother, the Greater Accra region. But in the parliamentary elections, it was the first time we actually saw Leku voting in the same direction. Voted NDC presidential, voted NDC parliamentary. We saw Honorable Ayiku beating Okoboy in that parliamentary contest. This year will be one of the keenly contested constituencies, and we know that both parties have their eyes on Leku.
Right.
But let's go into this 75 constituencies that we are talking about. Won marginally, less than 10%. Now let's break it down. In terms of the 75, what went to the NDC and how many went to the MPP?
Okay.
41 of them out of the 75 was actually seats or constituencies won by the NPP in the presidential elections with very slim margins. NDC 34. Now, so if you compare them, definitely you see that NPP won in 41 constituencies, but with very slim margins as low as 10%.
Yes.
NDC's own compared to that of NPP is not that close, 34, although, I mean, you can interpret and say it's very close. Let's look at the distribution of the regions. The 13 regions that, voted, or some of the constituencies that voted less than 10. Now, in terms of, ranking this, the central region was the region with the highest number of, constituencies that voted, or the gap between NPP and NDC was less than 10%. There were 15 constituencies in the central region that had, margins between NPP and NDC less than 10%. If you see purple, then that means that region is a swing region.
Right.
If you see blue, then that means it's a region that the NPP wins. And if it's green, then it means that it's an NDC block in terms of the regional distribution.
Okay.
Now, the new kid on the block in terms of, let's go back. The new kid on the block in terms of the region that is now considered as one of the swing regions is the Northeast region. It used to be an NDC region. Now, for the first time, we saw the NPP winning it in 2020. That makes Northeast, one of the, the swing regions. So now, instead of 3 regions, we have 4 swing regions. Okay. Northeast being the new kid on the block. So just look at it. All 4 swing regions were part of this mix in terms of having constituencies that were actually won with very small margins.
Kofi, I know that this data is particularly for 2020, but Central Region, you'd say that they're quite notorious for being a swing region, not only for 2020, but take me back to maybe 4 or 2 sessions back. Would you say that they have always been a swing region, or it depends on who is contesting? Yeah,
I mean, every bellwether state is a bellwether, constituency or region is a swing, but not all swings are bellwether. Okay. Bellwether means they will definitely vote for the winning candidate. And Central Region and Western Region, they have never failed. They will always vote for the winning candidate. The only, swing region that failed in 2020 was the Greater Accra region that voted for a losing party. But the Central region and the Western region will always vote for a winning candidate. So going back as far back as 1992, this is how all 3 regions have been voting until the Greater Accra region decided to part ways, from the bellwether regions. Okay. But this is very interesting. Why we decided to, single out the swing regions is that going into this year's election, winning the swing regions is important. So if you have, for instance, in the Central region where 15 constituencies, it was very keenly contested. Going into this year's election, you must be looking at those 15 constituencies. In the Greater Accra region, there were 14 constituencies that were actually won, but won with very small margins. Northern region, we spoke, I learned about the Northern region 2 days ago. Yes. That is one of the key battlegrounds going into this year's election. If you rank them, it's number 3 in terms of the region with the highest number of constituencies that voted, or the gap between NPP and NDC was less than 10%. The rest of them are there. Ashanti region definitely not in the big 5. Why? Because this is a region predominantly controlled by the NDC.
Constant.
Absolutely. But the 4 that were won with very small margins are constituencies that are being held by the NDC. Okay. Now, so going into this year's election, are we going to see a change? Is it that these 4 regions, are we going to see some of them flip, or some of them flip to the NPP or the NDC? It will be an interesting place to watch. This 4 we spoke about, Asawase, Idris, Eshodumase, Afram Plains, and New Edubiase. These are the 4 that
in these regions, are there some constituencies that have very significant or really large numbers that if at least that constituency won with really great numbers, it would mean anything at all?
Absolutely.
Despite it being a swing region.
And in fact, that is the reason why we brought Leku first.
Okay.
Leku is a golden hub in terms of elections. This is a constituency that's predominantly becoming more and more residential area. I mean, if you look at Leku, for instance, winning it is big. And if you are losing it, you need to make sure you lose with a very small margin. And in fact, in 2020, although the NPP lost it, The difference between the MPP and the NDC was just 7.8% or so, or percentage point or so. So it means that makes it very close, and you can count that as part of the 14 constituencies that had winning gaps less than 10% in the 2020 elections. So if you're asking me about some of the constituencies that were won with very small margins, but they are very key in terms of their numbers, Lejokuku is one of those constituencies that you need to watch in the upcoming elections. Okay. Now let's look at the next slide that talks about, the 35 swing, constituencies in the swing regions. Now, we are focusing on the swing regions for now. The 3 traditional swing regions. That is the Central Region, Greater Accra, and Western Region. And I'm not surprised at Western because they're quite close to the Central. In fact, and they behave quite closely the same, yes. And they vote possibly in the same pattern. Wherever Central Region goes, the Western Region will also vote the same direction. And they've been bellwether since 1992. And there were 35 constituencies in these 3 swing regions that were won with very slim margins. Okay. Now, if you rank them, definitely the Central Region comes first again. 15 constituencies. I know of a notorious constituency in Central Region, Cape Coast North. Cape Coast North is one of those areas that, it is no man's land. They can go anywhere. They can go anywhere in terms of both presidential and parliamentary. Now, Greater Accra Region, also one of them, Western Region 6. So, in fact, if you add all of them, 35, and 35 out of 75 constituencies that voted with a small margin, that means that the swing regions alone are taking close to about half of that 75 constituencies that voted with very small margins between the MPP and the NDC. Let's also look at this, other interesting slides that talk about this same story. Let's look at the next slide in terms of this 35 constituencies that we are looking at. Let's go to the next slide that will show us some of the regions or the constituencies in terms of the 3. Let me borrow your words, notorious constituencies that had very, very small margins. Margins as small or as slim as 0.3. 0.3. Wenchi, for instance, in 2020, MPP gets 49.6, NDC 49. Very, very close. Ayawaso West Wogon. Interesting place for both parliamentary and presidential. For the second time, John Dumelo will be coming against Ma Lydia or Lydia Al-Hassan. We'll see who will win. But in terms of presidential, it was one of the keenly contested constituencies in the 2020 election. 49.8 for the MPP, 49.5 for the NDC. Okankwe North, another interesting place to look at. Let's look at the last slide that paints another picture in terms of this slim margins that we are talking about. For me, this is it. This is the 4 regions that actually had more than half of their constituencies won with very slim margins. In terms of the Bono East region, 11 constituencies there, but 7 of them were won with margins below 10. Oh. Central region, 23 constituencies, 15 of them. Why particularly Bono East? Bono East because, they're not far off from Ahafo, they're not far from but Bono itself. After the introduction of the other new region, the 6 new regions, you realize that if you do the math or if you go back to history and you track the way the constituencies in the Bono East have been voting in the presidential election, you realize that it was purely or predominantly an NDC, stronghold. Right. But definitely you have Bono East also surrounded by, Akan, regions, and that also affects them. So that will tell you that although the NDC will control Bono East, it will not control it like the way it will control the Volta region or the Upper West or Upper East region. That makes it an interesting place. Central region, definitely because it is a swing region. Northern region, 5, this is Northeast, 5 out of the 6 constituencies in Northeast were won with very slim margins. Okay. This is definitely a battleground going into this year's election. And I'll end with the Northern region, our favorite region, 9, just perfect. A very even number, right? Very even. Yeah. Half of that 18 constituencies were won with margins below, 10%. So, these 4 regions for me, plus the swing regions will be the regions that we should be looking at in this year's election. Very, very interesting perspective in terms of how they voted and the very small margins between the MPP and the NDC.
Kofi, you're a champion. I know that you talked of Leku,
yeah.
but I look forward to Ayawaso West Wogon. Definitely.
Place.
Yes. Thank you so much. All right, moving on. Baku continues to be a critical area of focus for the Electoral Commission due to its history of tensions and distinct challenges. Dr. Bosman Asari, the EC's deputy chairman in charge of corporate services, addressed these issues in an interview on PM Express with Evans Mensah. Discussing voter registration in Baku, Dr. Asari acknowledged the challenges faced in the past, but expressed that they will be satisfied, or the satisfaction with the relative peace observed during the 2024 registration process. He conveyed optimism that this stability will carry through to the elections. Dr. Sari also emphasized that the EC's efforts in Baku extend beyond the central constituency, incorporating neighboring areas such as Baku West, Pusiga, and others into their preparations.
We had some challenges with the registration in 2023. Yeah. But in 2024, during the registration, the place was generally very, very peaceful. We didn't hear of any skirmishes. So in terms of the registration this year, they registered. But that of last year, I think we did it for about 2 or 3 days over there. Mm. And as you pointed out, we are not excited about what is happening over there. But we expect that by the time of the elections, the powers that be will be able to engage the people of Baku for them to understand the importance of the elections. We believe that things will be done in such a way that the people there can also choose their member of parliament. And when you talk about Baku, I think almost about 4 or 5 constituencies are involved, yeah, even including Pusiga and other places. So Baku West, Baku Central, all of them are included. So we do expect that the government, even all the political parties, will be working together to ensure that peace prevails. Because without that, we can't send our men there to go and work, our men and women who are going to be working as polling officials.
In the last month alone, at least 20 people have been killed. In fact, last week, 3 more people died because the conflict is so raging. And unfortunately, as we approach elections, the tensions have gone up again, and it's escalated. More people are dying now. You must have intelligence briefing on some, yes, of the not only Baku but other areas, but Baku in particular. What briefings are you getting in terms of the preparations to send?
The commission is still engaging with the security agencies. We haven't concluded on what we are going to do. We still have some few days, as you rightly pointed out. The special voting is about 13 days away, and the December 7th election is also about 18 days away. We are still working with them. Once we get the feedback that no, it will not be appropriate for you to go on with the elections there, the commission will act in that manner to ensure peace prevails. So the commission will do the needful. We'll continue to engage with the security agencies. Whatever advice they give us, we are not experts when it comes to security. We are only experts when it comes to conducting credible, peaceful elections. Once there is any advice that will be counterintuitive to what we are trying to do, the commission will listen to it and will certainly work with it.
Commission for Civic Education is warning of the dangers of increasing monetization and vote buying ahead of the 2024 elections. According to the chairperson of the commission, Kathleen Addy, vote buying has dire consequences on the democracy and development of the country post-election, as politicians will have to recoup money spent on elections. She spoke in a press briefing to give updates on the commission's activities ahead of the elections.
We've talked about money in politics, and the thrust of our argument when we engage people on this topic is that everybody should pause and ask themselves a couple of questions. The first one being, where is the money coming from? The fact that somebody is sharing money, the first reaction should not be gleefully going to get your share. We should ask ourselves as citizens that where is the money from? Because again, I have repeated so many times over the course of this year and even last year that there is no free money anywhere. Wherever the money is coming from is going to go back with interest. And ultimately, we the citizens will pay the bitter price in the form of truncated development. Because if we elect people who have gone and acquired debt to come and share the money for us so that they win the election, once they win, their focus will not be on the mandate, their focus will not be on doing what they are supposed to do for the people. Their focus will be on going out there, find a way to recoup the money, go and pay back to wherever they got it from, and then going to get more money for the next round. And so it works against our interest to continue to support this culture of money sharing, and monetization in political campaigns and elections. Secondly, I always also say that there's no...
The Commission is also charging political parties to impress upon their parliamentary candidates to make themselves available for policy dialogues to promote issue-based campaigns.
One of the most important impacts of the parliamentary dialogues is in the way they make democracy, is in the way they demonstrate democracy in action, where communities gather to interact directly with those who offer to represent them. They see contestants sharing a platform, sitting next to each other, being cordial, speaking in terms with no insults, no intemperate language, and no threats of violence. The dialogues demonstrates the core principle of contest of ideas that underpin true democracy. It is so important that citizens, especially young people, witness this to reinforce the understanding that the negative elements like insults and violence have no place in a democracy. Regrettably, some parliamentary candidates of the major political parties have refused to participate in the dialogues, citing a plethora of excuses, and this is unfortunate. The NCCE is urging all political parties to ensure that their parliamentary candidates actively participate in the dialogues. It is also an opportunity to highlight the policies of the parties.
The presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has ended his 15-day campaign tour of the Ashanti region, where he interacted with thousands of supporters, traditional leaders, and other interest groups. The tour, which began on November 4, saw Dr. Bawumia visit over 40 constituencies in the region, where he outlined his vision for Ghana's development and listened to concerns of the people. Although he had been through all the 16 regions, the Vice President is expected to head to his home region and also revisit some hotspot constituencies in the Ashanti, Eastern and few other regions before the December 7 general elections. My colleague Nana Boachi Yadom has a wrap from the Vice President's campaign in the Ashanti region.
It's been 15 days of intense campaign in the Ashanti region. That has been the routine of the NPP's presidential candidate, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, crisscrossing various constituencies in the Ashanti region. But then, the Vice President's campaign in the Ashanti region finally comes to an end in the Ahafwano Southeast constituency. He has toured all the 47 constituencies in the Ashanti region, sharing what he describes as the bold solutions for Ghana's future. The NPP's presidential candidate has been doing this alongside the Ashanti regional campaign manager for the NPP's campaign, the regional chairman as well, Bernard Entribo-Siako, popularly known as Chairman Wontumi, with some other party figures, including the former majority leader Osei Chairman Sabonsu, the Member of Parliament for Domiko Abdenya Adwoa Safo, Kwabena Eje Japan, the former secretary of the NPP, among others. They have been crisscrossing various constituencies in the Ashanti region, with thousands of people coming out in their numbers to listen to the message of the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia.
One of the key things I made as president, as the legacy of a railway system. Yeah, the rail, no, every Accra Tema to Kumasi all the way to Paga. That is the central line. From Accra to Paga. Yedi from Kumasi to Takradi. Then we are taking it from Ejisu to Eduading. And then we are taking it from Awaso through Ninahene to Eduading. Sa rail noa Yedi Bano. Edi Ejuma Bebre Ebebre Yememuno. Ejuma Bebre na Yedi Ba. We are going to use local materials. The railway is transformational. Yebe Chenji Niema Bebre Nampuntu Bebre so Abagana. In every sector of the economy, Yaya Asino, we have created more jobs, we have built more roads, we have built more railways, we have built more interchanges, we have built more hospitals, we have built more schools, we have built more sports facilities, we have built more libraries, we have built more airports, we have built more sanitation facilities, we have built more courts, we have done more Zongo development, we have done gold for oil, we have done digitalization, every sector of the economy, agriculture, industry, services, we have done more than you.
As the countdown continues, the Vice President and presidential candidate for the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Mamudu Bawumia, continues to demand for a debate between himself and the NDC's presidential candidate, John Mahama.
Osi onidi waye juma sinye. Mesi uji uhundia. So waye juma bra na yenye debate one on one. Bra na yenye debate one on one. Bra na yenye debate one on one. Chobai. Mika sano osuro. Wejani tisanko kwanketinketi. Wejani.
Well, it looks like the Vice President is ending his tour in the Ashanti region on a very good note. That is him dancing to Kimpaluta's Aseda. The Vice President, Dr. Mamudu Bawumia, with the parliamentary candidate for the Ahafuano Southeast constituency over there, displaying his dancing skills to Kimpaluta's Aseda song. That seems to be the very favorite song of the MPP's presidential candidate, Dr. Mamudu Bawumia. For Anthony Abeifakabo, former member of parliament for the Laura constituency, the road hasn't been cleared yet. It is time for the vice president to hit the streets again, go into some hotspot constituencies to share his message to the people.
We're going to head back to the north. We're going to head back to the north to finish up some of the constituencies, and we're going to be going around the country again. We're going to be running through the country once more, and we're not done until we're done.
The Vice President is not done with his tour so far.
We're not done with our tour at all. We are in it till the last day. You know, that is the type of energy, that's the type of drive that the candidate has garnered, and all of us on the team, like you've seen in the bus, we're all ready for the roller coaster.
The Vice President, after ending his tour in the Ashanti region, is expected to kickstart his campaign again in the northern region.
Well, that'll be all for Election Brief for today with me, MFA Akosia Adeti. However, for more election-related story, do visit My Joy Online. Particularly, you'd find elections stories over there. Thank you for watching.